There is a type of person you have probably encountered at some point in your life, and when you encountered them you felt something that you could not quite name in the moment but that you have thought about since. They were not the most accomplished person in the room. They were not necessarily the most attractive or the most intelligent or the most successful by any conventional measure. But there was something about them that made the room orient toward them without their asking it to. Something that made you want to know what they thought, what they valued, what they were building. Something that made their approval feel worth having even though they had not done anything obvious to make you feel that way. And the something, if you sat with it long enough, was this. They did not seem to need anything from you. Not your approval, not your validation, not your assessment of who they were. They were present, they were engaged, they were warm, but they were not, at any point in the interaction, angling for something. Not reaching, not performing, not calibrating their presentation to produce a particular effect on your perception of them. They were simply there. And the simply there, in a world of constant reaching, registered as something so unusual that your attention went to them the way attention always goes to the thing that is most different from everything else in the field. This essay is about what is actually happening inside that person, about the specific psychological architecture that produces the quality you felt in their presence, about why the culture consistently misidentifies this quality as confidence or charisma or emotional maturity, when it is something more specific and more structural than any of those labels capture. About the history of how this quality was understood by the strategic traditions that studied power and influence most carefully, and about what it actually takes to develop it, because it is developable, and the path to it is almost exactly the opposite of what the current culture recommends. Let's begin with what the quality is not, because the misidentifications are so common that they need to be cleared away before the actual thing can be seen. The quality is not confidence in the sense of self-assurance about your own abilities. Confidence in that sense is a belief about your own competence. You are confident that you can do the thing, that your work is good, that your judgment is sound. The person we are describing may or may not have this kind of confidence. Some of them are deeply uncertain about their abilities. What they do not have is a different and more fundamental thing. They do not have uncertainty about whether they deserve to exist as they are. The competence confidence and the existential confidence are completely different things, and the culture collapses them into the same word and then wonders why its advice about confidence never quite produces the effect it promises. The quality is also not emotional detachment in the sense of not caring. The person we are describing cares. Often they care more deeply than the people around them, precisely because they are not spending their attention on the management of others' perceptions of them and therefore have more attention available for the things that actually warrant attention. What they do not do is allow what they care about to become visible as need. This is the crucial distinction. Need is caring that has crossed into dependency, into the state where the outcome of the caring has become necessary for the person's interior functioning. The person who needs your approval is not simply someone who would prefer your approval. They are someone whose sense of themselves is contingent on receiving it. And that contingency is what the quality we are describing has dissolved. How does the contingency get dissolved? This is the question that matters most, and the answer is the least intuitive thing about the whole subject. The contingency gets dissolved not by caring less but by having more. More interior resource. More internal source of the thing that the approval was providing. The person who needs external approval needs it because they do not have a sufficient internal source of the thing the approval was giving them. The sense of being real, of matching, of being enough, of existing in a form that has value. When the internal source is sufficient, the external version of the same thing becomes genuinely optional. Not something to be rejected or avoided. just optional. And optional things do not produce need. They produce preference. And the person who has preferences rather than needs moves through the world in an entirely different way than the person who has needs, because the needs create vulnerability, specific, identifiable, exploitable vulnerability, and the preferences do not. The strategic traditions of every era that ever examined power and influence reached this conclusion independently, in different vocabularies but with the same underlying observation. The most powerful position in any human dynamic is the position of the person who genuinely needs the least from the dynamic. Not the person who pretends to need the least, or who has convinced themselves they need the least through suppression of the actual need. That performance is detectable and its detection immediately reverses the power dynamic it was trying to create. The person who actually needs the least, who has, through genuine interior development, arrived at a state in which the dynamic's outcome is genuinely not necessary for their functioning. This person holds what the traditions variously called leverage, or the superior position, or the unmoved position, and they hold it not through strategy but through the simple fact of not requiring the thing that everyone else in the dynamic is oriented around obtaining. Consider how this plays out in a specific and familiar context. Two people are in the early stages of a potential relationship, romantic, professional, social. Both of them are interested. Both of them feel the pull of the possibility. But one of them needs the relationship to develop in a particular way, needs the other person's interest to be confirmed, needs the ambiguity resolved in a particular direction in order to feel okay. And the other one simply wants to see what unfolds. Genuinely wants to, not as a strategy, not as a way of appearing to be less invested, but because their interior functioning is not contingent on the outcome. They would like this particular development. They would not be devastated if it did not occur. They are here, fully present, genuinely interested, warmly engaged, and they are also completely fine. And the one who is not completely fine, who needs the thing to go a particular way, can feel the difference between their own interior state and the other person's interior state within a few interactions, even if they cannot name it. And the feeling produces exactly the effect that the strategic traditions predicted. The person who needs the outcome works harder for it. They lean in more. They invest more. They give more of themselves more quickly. And the person who does not need the outcome is, almost involuntarily, in the superior position, not because they maneuvered for it, but because the simple fact of not needing produced the leverage that needing never could. If something in this is landing, take a second now and subscribe. The work we do here goes to the layer beneath the surface conversation about confidence and charisma, the layer where the actual mechanism lives. Hit the bell. Now let's go deeper into what builds the interior resource that makes the not needing real rather than performed. The interior resource has several components, and they are worth naming specifically because each one can be deliberately cultivated, and knowing which one you are low on tells you where the work is. The first component is what might be called self-sourced validation. This is the capacity to assess your own work, your own choices, your own character, with sufficient accuracy and sufficient honesty that the external assessment becomes supplementary rather than primary. The person who cannot assess themselves accurately is dependent on external assessment by necessity. They genuinely do not know how they are doing without the external signal, so the external signal becomes critical. The person who can assess themselves accurately, who can look at their own work and know with reasonable reliability whether it is good, and look at their own choices and know with reasonable reliability whether they were sound, and look at their own character and know with reasonable reliability who they actually are, has an internal reference point that does not require constant external calibration. This does not mean they are indifferent to external feedback. Good external feedback is valuable, and the self-sourced person seeks it for its information content. What it means is that the feedback is received as data rather than verdict. It informs the internal assessment rather than replacing it. And the difference between receiving feedback as data and receiving it as verdict is the difference between a person who can hear criticism without being destabilized by it and a person who cannot. The second component is a stable and inhabited sense of personal values. The person who does not know what they value, who has inherited a set of preferences from the culture and the family and the peer group without ever examining them, is perpetually dependent on the social environment to tell them what matters. Because without their own clear sense of what matters, the social environment's version of what matters fills the vacuum. And when the social environment's version of what matters is running your interior life, you are, in every practical sense, at the mercy of the social environment's approval. Because your sense of whether your life is going well is being generated by the same system that produces the approval you are seeking. Change the approval and you change the assessment. The person with a stable and inhabited sense of their own values does not have this problem. They have an internal metric that runs independently of the social metric. And when the two diverge, when the social environment is rewarding something that their values do not endorse, or withholding approval from something that their values affirm, they have a tiebreaker that does not require external input. Their own compass. And people with their own compass do not get lost in other people's territories. The third component is what the depth tradition might call the integration of the shadow, the claiming of the parts of yourself that were exiled by the original environment. The specific relevance here is this. The need for external approval is, at its deepest level, the need for the external world to accept the parts of you that you have not yet been able to accept internally. The person who has exiled their neediness needs the world to tell them they are not needy. The person who has exiled their ambition needs the world to tell them they are not too much. The person who has exiled their darkness needs the world to tell them they are good. And as long as the exiled parts are unintegrated, the approval seeking will continue, because the approval is the only available substitute for the internal acceptance that the exile is preventing. When the integration happens, when the neediness is owned, the ambition is claimed, the darkness is acknowledged. The approval-seeking loses its most urgent fuel. The exiled parts no longer require external confirmation because they are receiving internal reception. And the energy that was going into the seeking is now available for everything else. The fourth component is the simplest to describe and the hardest to develop. It is the accumulated experience of having survived the withdrawal of approval, of having been disapproved of by specific people in specific situations for specific things, and having discovered that the disapproval, however uncomfortable, did not in fact produce the outcome the nervous system was predicting. The nervous system's prediction, shaped by the original environment, is that disapproval is fatal. That the withdrawal of approval produces the kind of loss that is not survivable, the loss of connection, of love, of belonging, of the basic warmth that the small person needed to live. This prediction was accurate in the original environment. It is almost never accurate in the adult environment. But the nervous system does not update its predictions based on logic. It updates them based on experience. And the only experience that updates the prediction about disapproval is the experience of disapproval, of being disapproved of and surviving it, of having someone withdraw their approval and discovering that you are still here, still functioning, still intact, still capable of the next thing. Each survival of disapproval is a small update to the nervous system's prediction. And enough small updates, accumulated over enough experiences, produce a nervous system that no longer treats disapproval as an emergency, that can be disapproved of and continue, that can lose someone's approval and not collapse, that can, in other words, operate with genuine freedom in the social world, because the social world's primary lever, approval and its withdrawal, no longer has the grip it once had. This is the architecture taken together that produces the person you felt in the room, the one who did not seem to need anything from you, whose presence had a quality of being genuinely complete in itself. Not because they had achieved some final and permanent state of enlightenment, because they had done, across years of unglamorous interior work, the 4 specific things that reduce the genuine need for external approval. They had developed the capacity to assess themselves. They had clarified and inhabited their own values. They had integrated enough of their exiled shadow material that the approval-seeking had lost its most urgent fuel. And they had accumulated enough experience of surviving disapproval that the nervous system's prediction about its consequences had been updated to something closer to reality. None of this is fast. None of it is glamorous. None of it produces the immediate visible results that the modern conversation about confidence and charisma promises. The person who walks into a room and changes the air did not develop that quality in a weekend, or through a technique, or by deciding to care less. They developed it through the slow, repeated, often uncomfortable work of building the interior resource that makes the not needing real. And the reality of the not needing is exactly what is felt in their presence. Not the performance of indifference, not the cultivation of mystery through strategic unavailability. The genuine, built, inhabited quality of a person who has enough inside that the outside is no longer running them. There is one more thing worth saying, and it is the thing that most essays on this subject leave out because it is less flattering than the rest. The people who have developed this quality are not always easy to be around. The same interior completeness that makes them magnetic also makes them, in certain social contexts, slightly uncomfortable. Because the person who does not need your approval is also the person who is not calibrating their behavior to produce your comfort. They say what they think rather than what will land well. They hold positions that do not shift based on the temperature of the room. They end conversations when the conversation has ended rather than when the other person is satisfied. They are warm, but the warmth is genuine rather than managed, which means it is also inconsistent in the way that genuine warmth always is, present when it is present, absent when it is absent, not available on demand simply because the social situation calls for it. The social world, which is organized around the management of impressions and the maintenance of comfort, finds this quality slightly threatening. And the people who have it have usually made peace with that threat. They have accepted that the interior completeness that makes them powerful also makes them, for some people, difficult. And they have decided that the trade is worth making. Because the alternative, the perpetual calibration of your interior state to the social environment's preferences, is not actually living. It is an elaborate and exhausting performance of living. And the performance, however convincing, always knows that it is a performance. And the knowing is the price that the performing person pays for their social ease. The quiet knowledge in the background of every well-managed interaction that the person being approved of is not quite the person that is actually there. The person who has stopped performing knows something different. They know in the background of every interaction that whoever is in the room with them is in the room with the actual thing, with the unmanaged, unperformed, unglamorous, real person. And that knowledge, the knowledge of being genuinely present rather than strategically represented, is the interior experience that the exterior world reads as the quality you felt in that room. The quality you could not quite name. The quality that made you want to know what they thought. The quality that made the approval feel worth having. The quality that had nothing to do with what they did to produce it, and everything to do with what they had stopped doing. The stopping finally and completely of the performance, and the beginning in the space the performance left of the actual self. If something in this reached the part of you that is tired of the performance, do something now. Comment with these 3 words: I stop performing. Just that. Let me see how many of us are ready to trade the social ease of the performance for the interior ease of the real thing. And give this a like if it moved something. The next video takes this into the specific territory of relationships. What changes in the relationships around you when you stop performing, who stays and who leaves, and what the ones who stay are made of. It is the practical continuation of everything we just discussed. I will see you there.